So what are the attributes of God? Because if we're going to create a new one, we have to know what God is supposed to do. Well, 1, God is something in which we can have faith. 2, God is something which explains that which cannot be explained. 3, God is something from which a moral vision emerges. 4, God is all-knowing. 5, God is all-powerful. 6, God is the creator. And 7, I would say God is relevant. Now, some problems with the old version of God. There are some problems with the current version of God that I hope to correct in God version 2. First problem, the idea that God requires something from human beings. It seems to me that if God has all the attributes that we just listed, it's very unlikely that God would require specific things or worship from human beings. 2, God as an entity is something like us. The Greeks and the Romans had ideas of God that looked very much like humans. In fact, they even mated with humans and produced some hybrids. The Jews don't describe God, but they describe behaviors that seem quite human. The Christians have a God who was a man, and then another God who was this man's father. Enlightened theologians do not insist on a vision of God that corresponds to the old man with the beard, yet the Christian God is distinctly male. God, and then number 3, third problem, God is interested in our affairs, and yet tragedies happen. Unless you're willing to throw your hands up and say it's God's will, it's very hard to fathom why some horrible things occur despite the fervent prayers of the pious, if in fact there's a God who's interested in human affairs. So how do we create God version 2 that has all the attributes of God and that seems relevant to how we live today? Now keep in mind that this version of God, like all the others, is the creation of human beings. And while language may sometimes appear to point to some truth that is out there somewhere, we as humans will always be limited by the abilities of human perceptions and human consciousness. So it's up to us to create a God that serves us. So I say that we are part of a system which is much greater than humankind. Clearly we are all part of the life that exists on this planet. We know that this planet is part of a solar system. We know that our solar system is part of a galaxy. And our galaxy is part of a group of galaxies. At each level, there seems to be some type of organization that we can identify. Everything from the single cell to the solar system seems to be created, exists, and then goes out of existence. I might add, and then exists again. Does this organization exist outside of human conceptualization? I would say that we brought it into being by our language, and yet we have conceived of something greater than ourselves. Okay, so let's get right into the work of building the new God. God is something in which you can have faith. The system that we're a part of has been going on for longer than most of us can imagine. Whatever the process is, it's something that we can have faith in. Keep in mind that there's no objective basis for this faith. We don't know what time it is, and we have no way of knowing that everything won't come to an abrupt end tomorrow morning. Yet, putting our faith in this process seems sensible. In the same manner that for some, praying to a father figure that isn't listening seems sensible. God begins to explain that which cannot be explained. The process that includes human life can be seen as a complex system in which everything can be understood. To say something is God's will is not different from saying that everything that happens is part of some larger process which we can call God. It's not that there's a human-like creature out there that is willing what happens, but rather everything is a part of God. God is something from which a moral framework develops. As we come to the realization that we're not separate from God, but instead begin to see ourselves as part of God, then the way that we relate to each other can be seen as the way we relate to God. The Talmud records a famous incident involving Rabbi Hillel. A Gentile approached him, saying that he would convert to Judaism on the condition that he teach me the entire Torah while standing on one leg. Hillel responded that he would do so, and encapsulated the Torah into one statement. What is hateful to you, do not do to another. So, as people who are all part of God, it gives us a framework for how we should treat each other. God is all-knowing. Well, knowing is human activity. However, all that is human is contained by God. The knowledge that we attribute to God can never be attained by human beings. We simply aren't equipped to have the knowledge. God, the process, can be said to encompass all points of view, while human beings can only attend to a few at best. God is all-powerful. This one I find tricky. I had to go back to my Bible. The dictionary says that power is 1, the ability to do or act, or 2, the capability of doing or accomplishing something. I think that has less value in God version 2, since God version 2 is not a volitional God. But clearly God is active, and the forces that move the universe are indeed powerful. God is the creator. Well, given the description that I've offered, if you choose to believe, then it's clear that we came out of it. I'm not saying that this God created us with what human beings call intent. Rather, I'm saying that a creative force exists. For me, this is not a prelude to some anthropomorphic version of the Creator. At some level, everything is created. And finally, God is relevant. I have proposed a grandiose God whose existence seems quite detached from our own. How could God be relevant? To me, this God is relevant as much for what it is as for what it is not. When in the name of God, we cease the task of pleasing a father figure so that we might enter heaven, then we might be able to create it right here where it belongs. And when in the name of God, we come to realize that all of humankind is part of this system, then we realize that our priority must be caring for each other. Stan, you want to cue the... No.